Welcome in, everybody. Glad, as always, that you're along with us. That's how I start the baseball broadcast with the Rockies. I hadn't tried that out here on the podcast, but I am glad that you're with us and that you listen, whether it's periodically or on a regular basis. Bless you for doing that. We are sponsored by Huntington Bank and by Steel. Love the folks at Huntington Bank. They are great partners, and they're cropping up on every corner of our great state. And the reason why is they care about you and they care about making your life, your banking life, much simpler. And they're the home of asterisk-free checking with no monthly maintenance fee, no matter what. So stop by and visit their newest branch in Louisville at 515 McCaslin Boulevard or any one of their, check this out, now 37 Colorado branches. Make the switch today at huntington.com/yourmoney. You'll be glad that you did. Also sponsored by Steel. Love the folks at Steel. They have a ton of deals going right now. So just go to their website, steelusa.com. That's STIHL. And you're going to see a number of great opportunities to improve your yard, improve everything on your property, and save some money in the process. Trimmers, chainsaws, much, much more. They have 0% financing options on a number of different tools. So check them out. That's Steel, STIHL, steelusa.com, and steeldealers.com is where you'll find the nearest dealer to you. And like we always tell you, there's more than 10,000 around the country, so it's pretty much a guarantee that there's one in a few minutes of your home. That's Steel, STIHL. All right, we're going to begin, before we talk about baseball, we're going to begin with the Nuggets because they've been stealing a lot of headlines over the last week with free agency and teams looking to improve their rosters immediately. There was a flurry of activity, and the two-headed general manager partnership looks like it's working out just fine because the Nuggets are getting rave reviews around the NBA for how they've improved their roster. And keep in mind, the Nuggets took the world champion Oklahoma City Thunder to 7 games. The Thunder eliminated the Nuggets, as we know, in Game 7, then ultimately went on to win the NBA championship over the Indiana Pacers. But the Nuggets were pretty darn close, and it was very clear. You don't have to be a basketball savant to know the difference in that series, and the difference, even if the Nuggets had somehow gotten past Oklahoma City, would be their depth or lack thereof, and they addressed it clearly. The other issue, there was depth and there was three-point shooting, a lack of three-point shooting. The Nuggets shot fewer threes than anybody in the NBA a year ago. And they went out and they got an old friend in Bruce Brown, who's a terrific defender. And they also got Tim Hardaway Jr. Both of those guys can shoot the three. Both of those guys can make clutch threes, not just in mid-January games, but in crunch time in the postseason. They have a record of doing that. And it didn't cost them a lot of money to get those two veterans who are, on the backside of their career, but still very valuable commodities. The biggest deal that they did, Michael Porter Jr., who was always coveted by the organization, very close to the Kroenke family with his ties to the University of Missouri, et cetera. They traded him for Cameron Johnson. And Cameron Johnson is a guy that also shoots the three very well. Similar size, maybe a couple inches shorter. Honestly, a better defender. This seems like an upgrade. It really does. And we'll see how it plays out. The Nuggets also rid themselves of what became an onerous contract, because it was a max deal when Porter signed it. And so they sent a future number one to New Jersey, or New York, I should say, to Brooklyn, to make that deal whole. And on paper, I love it. I love everything they've done so far. Now, the one thing as we tape this, it's up in the air, is Jonas Valanciunas is now talking about perhaps playing in Europe. And what will that do to the Nuggets having a true backup center for when Jokic needs some time off the floor? He's not going to play 48 minutes every night. That you can't do that, right? So that is still kind of maybe a wrench in the plans, but you got to love everything they've done so far. And I even will tell you that with Deron Holmes coming back, young player who the Nuggets love his upside, this will be a different looking team, especially the second unit, and it'll be a better team. And it'll be better starting five, and it can be a better second unit without question, just on the moves that they've made already. And one of the things that I have not read about at all, because it centers all of the pieces written about what the Nuggets have done, centers on the acquisition, but they don't talk about Christian Braun, for instance, still being a young player who made marvelous strides last year, especially offensively. His ability to shoot the three, used to be a reluctant three-point shooter. And with his work ethic, there's no reason to believe that he doesn't, maybe the leap isn't as significant as it was from year 2 to year 3, but year 3 to year 4, not without beyond the realm of possibility, one would assume that he's going to get that much better. I really like where the Nuggets are. You got to love where the Nuggets are, based on what they accomplished last year in the postseason, probably surprising a lot of people. And there's no question they have a much better and deeper roster now as they embark on the season, which summer flies by. Next thing you know, we'll be talking hoops on a regular basis. So big kudos to the Denver Nuggets for all that they have done so far. I want to talk one more thing about the NBA. I know we live in a period of time where everyone has a podcast. I put my hand over my chest. I got a podcast. Everybody has a podcast. And we also have these talk shows in the morning, of which I'm guilty. I listen to Stephen A. quite a bit. Don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but I watch First Take. And it's concocting controversy sometimes where there isn't controversy, or trying to solicit opinions on things you probably wouldn't have an opinion on because they have to fill up a couple of hours every day. One topic that seems to come up annually is, where will Kevin Durant land? And I'm like, because it was a big topic until he was traded from Phoenix to Houston. And I'm like, who cares? Kevin Durant's a Hall of Famer. Kevin Durant's a great, great player. One of the best shooters we'll ever see, especially considering he's almost 7 feet tall. And he's done his fair share of winning. But he didn't turn Phoenix around, even though he was coupled with Booker and Bradley Beal. Didn't turn them into instant contenders. And I don't know how it'll play out in Houston. Houston, defensively, really good team. Does this help them enough offensively that they come out of the West next year? I don't know. But I just never have understood why it became like the biggest story, or one of the biggest stories. Where will Kevin Durant land? He's going to play next year at 37. So it's not like this is 27-year-old Kevin Durant. But that's the world we live in, with the podcasts like my own, like all the talk shows, the argument shows, as some people will call them. By the way, we have Mickey Moniak coming up in a little bit. We're going to get to that shortly. We want to talk about the Rockies this week. Came home from Milwaukee. They played 3 against a Houston team that is surprisingly way out in front in the American League West. And I say surprisingly because Kyle Tucker, who's a great player, was traded in the offseason to Chicago and is starring for the Cubs right now, will be the most coveted free agent at the end of the season. Alec Bregman is no longer a Houston Astro. He now applies his craft for the Boston Red Sox, who the Rockies will play in a few days. And so you say, we understand that Houston's had this phenomenal run, but they're going to have to take a step back. Seattle every year seems like on the cusp of doing things. Texas is only a year plus removed from being world champions. No way Houston's going to be on top in that division. Well, here we are, handful of days away from the All-Star break, and Houston's way out in front in the American League West. Well, I got to see them up close and personal as they took on the Rockies, and I'm trying to figure out, why are they so good? Well, they've been great in one-run games, which to me is somewhat arbitrary. They do pitch well. Offensively, they're pedestrian at best, They have, badly missed the big left-handed bat who's been out the whole year. I'm escaping his name right now. I'll think of it in a moment. You still have Jose Altuve, but they're kind of grinding out games. And so I had like this epiphany, and it's a sports cliche, but I think it has meaning. I really do think it has validity to it. And that is the fact that teams that have a winning culture, that are accustomed to winning and winning big, and that would apply to the Houston Astros, they expect to win every time they take the field. There's an expectation if they're down a run or two late that they will come back and find a way to win. That when they're ahead by a run or two late, that their bullpen, even if it's injured, and they've dealt with a lot of injuries, Houston, they'll come through and close out the game. And then there are other teams, and the Rockies fall clearly into this category, that they honestly hope to win because they keep seeing enough bad things happen over the last several years, and we know the accumulation of losses more recently, that, we're up and let's go. And the energy is good and positive in their clubhouse. Believe it or not, it really is, despite all of the losses and despite the talk of being on a record pace for losses. But it's not an expectation to win. It's a hope to win. And the Rockies aren't alone in that category. And you can go to the NBA and the NHL and the NFL, and the same thing exists. And I think it's real. I think that the really good teams not only have talent, clearly, but there's an expectation to win. And that only comes as a byproduct of winning, and winning quite a bit over a period of time. And that's why the Houston Astros can lose a lot of big name players. Yordan Alvarez, by the way, is who I was trying to think of. Yordan Alvarez barely played this year. He's one of the great sluggers in the game. But most teams couldn't overcome that. Couldn't overcome Bregman no longer being there, Kyle Tucker no longer being there, the number of injuries they've had to their rotation. Yet there's an expectation to win. And that's why I think they come out on top in so many one-run games. But I do think there is validity to that. And the only way it changes, because I do like the Rockies culture. I'm around it every single day. I think that they are playing much better in many areas, not all. Defense, I still can't explain to you why the defense has been as poor as it has been all year. But under Warren Schaefer, I mean, they get after it every day. And we've talked about the fact that they're running more and taking the extra base hit, and they show up every day. They're not going through the motions. And I'm sure these next few weeks are going to be interesting because some bodies are going to get moved. But over a period of time, and I hope 2 years, 3 years from now, we're talking about a team that's started to win more frequently and maybe accomplishing things like the postseason again. And then you start to build that expectation to win. But it takes time, and we know the Rockies in that regard have a long way to go. Watching Milwaukee last week, watching the Houston Astros play, they have, guys that don't swing and miss. And it keeps coming back to that for me. There's way too many empty at-bats. The Rockies just brought up another young slugger who, fingers crossed, turns out well. And, you don't find that out overnight. It takes a long period of time usually to determine exactly what you have. Yanquiel Fernandez came up, big, strong guy who's going to, wow you during batting practice. He really came on in Albuquerque, and he deserves the opportunity to be here. But like so many young Rockies, quote unquote, want to be sluggers, hope to be sluggers, there's too much swing and miss. And you cannot have a roster full of Tyler Freeman, who I absolutely love, but you have to have guys that put the ball in play more, like the Dodgers are able to do, like the Houston Astros are able to do, like even a team devoid of, the slug element, the Milwaukee Brewers, they put the ball in play. And then over a period of time, also, you have to acquire enough arms that miss bats. Got to miss more bats. So it's stuff we've talked about before, and sometimes it's somewhat right in your face as a broadcaster when you're facing teams like the Astros, like the Brewers, that are able to do that. And I think that's going to be the direction moving forward in terms of player acquisition for the Rockies, trying to address that more, because it's becoming alarming. I know the strikeouts are everywhere in baseball. Every year they seem to set a new record. It's not just the Rockies. Swinging and missing is not the walk of shame when you punch out that it used to be in baseball. But if you're gonna employ that kind of group, you better hit a lot of home runs. And the Rockies right now, as you know, have not hit enough home runs. But it's an ongoing process. And again, over the next few weeks, I think there's going to be some player movement. There's going to probably be some prospects coming back to talk about, and we'll get into that at that point in time. One of the interesting moves that the Rockies made right before opening day was they were able to acquire Mickey Moniak, who's a former number 1 pick in the entire draft out of a San Diego area high school. And he debuted with Philadelphia Phillies, the team that drafted him. And he had some moments there, but he was playing with a real veteran group with an expectation every night, speaking of expectation, that they were going to win. And he ultimately was traded to the Angels for Noah Syndergaard. And with the Angels, he had his 2 best years in the big leagues. 23 especially was a good year. Last year, not as good as 23. And then he was let go in spring training. That's how the Rockies acquired him. Well, as we have this conversation, Mickey Moniak, playing about 75% of the time, has really done nicely. He's 2 off as we tape this on a Saturday afternoon. He's 2 off of his career high in home runs. He's already got a dozen, so he's on pace to be in the mid-20s for home runs. He's got a lot of extra base hits, so his OPS is in the high 700s. He's played well defensively. He can steal the occasional bag, and he just turned 27 about a month ago. So I think this was a real solid acquisition for the Rockies, and he can be one of those players, you've heard me say this before, that can be part of the answer, part of the solution going forward. He's also a good dude. So I think you're going to enjoy our conversation this week. Rockies outfielder, sometimes in right, sometimes playing now for Brenton Doyle in center, Mickey Moniak.
This time of year, All-Star break's a couple weeks away. You've been at this a while. How's the body holding up?
It's good. Yeah, it feels good. Feels like every year, doing this, find new ways to make sure it's feeling good on a daily basis. And, 10th year pro ball now, so I've got some good things that I like to do to kind of stay fresh and, definitely still learn. So
I want to take you back. You're unusual, first of all, to be a big leaguer. It's hard to get here. But the fact that you went 1-1, I mean, that's a label that you will always carry. Has it been a burden at times?
I think maybe subconsciously. Nobody's harder on me than me. So, coming through the minor leagues, getting called up, whether I was 1-1 or not, I wanted to prove that, I can be a good baseball player in this league. And, it took a little bit longer than some would have liked, longer than I would have liked. But I think, everything kind of happens for a reason. And, carrying that 1-1, I would say, is more of an honor than a burden.
Was it tough going where you did in terms of, I'm not talking about the draft, like going to Philadelphia, because Philadelphia can be tough on the best players. If they have one bad night, it's like they're on them. You know how Philly fans are. Was that a tough place to break in?
Yeah, I think they're very passionate fans, and I think that anywhere you go, all the fans are gonna they're gonna root for their teams. They're gonna live and die with their teams, and I think Philadelphia more so than others, I would say. But I think the fans were the fans. They were awesome. I think majority of the interactions I had with Philly fans were positive, and they supported me throughout. And I think the tougher part about coming up was being with a team that was had hundreds of millions of dollars in the field. They were in win now mode, and there wasn't really a leash for me to go out and get 100 at-bats. I think the most at-bats I got in a single stint in the big leagues in Philly was maybe 25. So there wasn't a huge leash to get comfortable in the big leagues. And totally understand why. You know, they were in win now mode when I was there. They're in win now mode now, and you know, I think you know, they traded me. Felt like it would help them and ultimately help me. So yeah, you know, I think coming up in Philly was something that was good for me. I think it definitely, you know, toughened me up. You know, kind of spent the years that turned me into a man there, and yeah, very grateful for it.
Was there a guy, because there's always big names, right, that you played with that took the time to kind of put his arm around you and take you, you know, under their wing, so to speak?
Yeah, you know, I think every guy in that Philly clubhouse kind of did their part in kind of guiding me, mentoring me. You know, I got to play with some incredible baseball players, incredible people. You know, I got to, you know, spend time with guys. I think early in my career when I first came up, Jay Bruce was the guy when I first got there to kind of take me under his wing a little bit. Tommy Hunter and Jake Arrieta, I remember kind of bringing me and Alec Bowman and kind of just making us feel comfortable in the big leagues. You know, Bryce was a guy when he signed there. I remember it was my first big league camp, and I think I went to Double-A that year. But, you know, he went out of his way to come up to me and just be like, hey, dude, anything you need, let me know. I'm here for you. And then, you know, guys like JT, Schwarber, Reese Hoskins, Castellanos. I mean, the list goes on and on. And then, you know, obviously Mike in Anaheim, and yeah, Kevin Pillar last year was big for me. There's been a lot of guys I've been fortunate to play with, and you know, I think every guy that I've played with has kind of impacted me in their own way, and I'm very again, very grateful for it.
Would you change anything? I mean, it's easy always to alter things, if you will, and I'm pointing toward the fact that you went 1-1, which is, you know, phenomenal achievement in itself. But did you miss maybe, hey, when buddies were at school and you know, the guys who went and played college baseball, that sort of thing? Do you ever think about that?
No. I from a young age, I knew I wanted to play pro ball. I knew I wanted to be a big leaguer. You know, going into the draft, there's obviously a really good chance that, you know, I was going to be able to fulfill that dream of, you know, kind of getting it started, you know, playing pro ball. But at the end of the day, you know, going into the draft, I was also, I mean, I was just as excited to go to UCLA and play for Coach Savage and kind of live that whole experience. But, you know, the way it worked out about as good as it could have worked out. You know, I still had all my friends who were in college. You know, you got the whole offseason, which is, you know, in the middle of the school year. So I got to go visit a bunch of buddies, a bunch of different places, experience the college life. And then, you know, come February, it was time to play baseball, do exactly what I wanted to do.
Did the 23 season solidify in your mind that, hey, not only do I belong here, but I can excel here?
Yeah, most definitely. 2023 was huge for me. You know, up until that point, hadn't had a ton of success in the big leagues. You know, was up and down for 3 years at that point. And, you know, 2023 going into spring training, kind of knew it was a pivotal year for me in my career and just kind of my mental state as far as, you know, having the confidence, like you said, to be a big leaguer, to succeed. You know, put in a lot of good work that offseason, went into spring training, had a good spring, didn't make the team out of camp, but went down to AAA and you know, continued to play well. And, you know, when I got called up, was in a good spot to go out there and perform. Felt like I was in a good space mentally. And, yeah, the rest is history. You know, had a good year that year, and I think that year was a huge stepping stone in, you know, my career to be able to say, you know, I belong here. You know, I can do this, you know, at a high level and, you know, hopefully for a long time.
Either verbally or maybe through observation, is there one thing that comes to mind in your relationship with Mike Trout that you've taken away?
You know, I think the biggest thing playing with guys like Mike and, you know, Bryce and Shohei and, you know, these superstars that, you know, can't really go outside their hotel room and you know, kind of be in the public eye because they are so big and larger than life, is that they're just guys. I mean, it's the craziest thing. You know, I think, you know, I grew up watching Mike play. I think, you know, when I got interviewed in pre-draft workouts, they asked who my favorite player was, and I remember saying Mike Trout in high school. You know, I've always admired him, you know, as a baseball player, but, getting to know him, get to be his teammate, getting to build a friendship with him, it kind of puts things in perspective as far as like, everybody who plays this game, they're just human beings. And we're blessed with incredible talent to be able to do what we do. And I think he was a perfect example of that, of, a guy who's going to go down as one of the best to ever do it. And just to watch him go about his business on a daily basis, how he treats people, how he treats the fans, definitely was probably my biggest takeaway.
And then, this game, obviously day to day, all it does is try to rob you of confidence. But you get released a couple days before opening day this year, and you end up in Colorado, which we'll talk about here. But what was that 24 hours like? Yeah,
it's crazy. I think it was obviously something new for me getting released. You never expect to. For whatever reason, it happened, and surprisingly, it was a pretty quick turnaround as far as mentally being like, all right, what's next? And when I called my agent right after I got released, he already had inclinations that things are going to be okay and be okay quickly, and he'd mentioned Colorado, and I got excited once I heard that, just because it's always been a team that has shown interest in me since I was in high school, coming through the draft, and throughout the years on other teams, whether that be the trade deadline, offseason, whatever may have you. But I think it was a crazy 24, 48 hours. But definitely grateful for it. I think there's a lot of learning moments in this game, a lot of things you can experience that'll just make you stronger, and I think that was one of them.
Are you pleased with so far what's transpired individually? Obviously, from a record standpoint, nobody's pleased. But from what you've been able to accomplish so far in your first few months here?
Yeah, I think so far my time here has been it's been awesome. I got welcomed with open arms. When I came in the day before opening day, the guys have been great. Felt like I've kind of fit into this clubhouse really quickly, and the coaching staff. When it was Buddy and Bam Bam when I first got there, to Clint, to now having Shafe and Czech and Nick. It's been just a lot of good people. I'd say, I think like you said, nobody's excited where we are as a team. We can kind of take that as it is and just try to get better every day, and I feel like we have been doing that. I feel like we're getting better. I think we're young. I think that there's a lot of talent in this room. So I think, being here, that's something that's very exciting. And, I've definitely enjoyed my, couple months here so far.
I say this quite a bit on the air, or periodically at least, that you just turned 27. I mean, that's typically 26 to 32 is what everyone states is the prime as a Major League Baseball player. So you're at the very beginning of your prime, even though the name's been out there for a while, starting way back, obviously, when you were the first pick in the draft. Do you look at that and say, hey, I know the best is in front of me?
Yeah. I think, debuting at 22 years old, kind of gave me a head start, to get to where I'm at today. And, 27 years old, definitely think there's the best still ahead. And, I think my whole mentality ever since I got drafted was just to get better every day. And, I love the game of baseball. I think that, they're going to have to tear the jersey off me for me to stop playing. So as long as I got a jersey on me, I'm going to continue to try to get better, continue to grow my game, continue to try to help the team win. And, it is crazy to think about sometimes. I kind of got to remind myself that at times. But that there's remind myself there's a lot ahead. But, just one of those things, or just take it day by day.
I would think this, the way Warren Schaefer wants to play fits a lot of your skill set. Wants to run, wants to be aggressive, takes the extra base. Is that how you look at it?
Yeah, most definitely. Schaefer brings the energy every day. He's, he likes to push the envelope. He knows that we got guys up and down this lineup that can do a lot of things. And, we got guys who can hit the ball out of the ballpark, guys who can run, putting on the hit and run, kind of playing the game of baseball the way it's meant to be played. And, I think we're kind of seeing that over the last few weeks as an offense in the month of June. I think we've been clicking. We've been putting together good at bats, I think Shafe's, obviously he's the leader of that, and he's the driving force in that, and I think it definitely suits me and our team.
Last one. Whether you broadcast, whether you play as you do, whether you coach, whether you're a fan, that guy who is your teammate, who you're playing against as we chat right now, Shohei, he's a freak show. He may go down, in my mind, as the greatest player of all time. What did you take away from being his teammate? What would you tell someone who asked, like I am, what's this cat all about? What makes him tick?
I think, like I was saying about those guys I mentioned before, he's just one of the guys. You see him in the clubhouse, hanging out, playing Clash Royale on his phone, talking crap, everything that every single guy here does, he does. He just happened to be blessed with some unbelievable ability to pitch in the big leagues at a very high level and hit in the big leagues at a very high level. And, people who ask me, I tell them, we gotta cherish it while it's here, because, we may never see this again. We definitely haven't seen this to the level that he's done it. But again, at the end of the day, he's also one of the guys, and I consider him a good friend, and he's definitely somebody that I'll be able to tell my kids, grandkids that got to share the field with him.
Very cool. Hey, good luck tonight. Good luck. Stay healthy the rest of the way.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Big thanks to Mickey, and hope his success continues. As I said, I really like that move. Kind of a subtle move by the Rockies, but it looks like a real good acquisition. We'll have more prior to the All-Star break with the Rockies. Again, they head to Boston next week and on to Cincinnati. I'm going to play hooky from Cincinnati, take a few days off, extend my All-Star break a little bit, hang out with friends and family back east, maybe even head up to Martha's Vineyard for a day. So I'm looking forward to that. Avalanche look more and more like they're going to they have money, and they're going to wait. We'll see if this holds out, but it looks like they're going to wait till in season, maybe to address whatever their need is closer to the trade deadline. Is it a 3C, a third center? We'll see with that. I was told by Marky, who keeps me abreast of what's going on in sports talk radio, because even though at different times in my career I've been immersed in sports talk radio as a participant, as a host, I don't listen anymore. I listen to satellite radio, and it's not sports talk. I get it on the television shows like First Take when I'm working out. I listen to music, and so he keeps me abreast of of what's cooking, especially here in Denver. What's moving the fan bases around? And evidently, one of the topics this week is that if Jared Bednar and the Avalanche lose in the first round next year, he's out as a coach. I'm not big on firing coaches and, as people who have a podcast or a microphone in front of them and doing talk radio. I have too much respect for the coaching industry. I'll point to Bud Black. Everybody wanted, Bud Black on. He'd been there a long time. And I'm not saying there aren't places where you need a new voice. And I think Warren Schaefer's really doing a terrific job, and I mean that. But you have to have the horses. You've heard me get on my soapbox about that before. Doesn't matter what the sport is, you got to have talent. Warren's doing a really good job. It's not like the Rockies have done a 180. The same thing with Jared Bednar. They have a lot of talent with the Avalanche. They're not in the same classification of clearly where the Rockies are. But you know what? Jared Bednar is one hell of a coach. He's one hell of a coach. And it's still to be determined whether or not the Avalanche have made enough moves. And we won't know this until next winter in February or March, and really probably until next spring to see how it all plays out. But it is Stanley Cup or bust. So I understand people saying that about Bednar. But Bednar is so well thought of in the industry. And from people I know who would know, he's still really well thought of by the group of players who have to listen to him on a daily basis. So, some of that talk is just sports talk run amok in the dog days of early summer before football has gotten going. The NBA and the NHL are done. So we need a topic du jour. And I understand Jared Bednar being on the hot seat was one of them. this week. Anyhow, I'm a Jared Bednar fan, big Avalanche fan, so you know that I want to see them do well. And yeah, they got to win another championship at least, especially with the 2 Hall of Fame players on their roster in McKinnon and Makar. But more on that down the road. Again, kudos to the Nuggets. They're winning the offseason, which they needed to do. So good for them. We will chat next week, maybe from Beantown in front of the All-Star game. Thanks again to Mickey Moniak for joining our podcast. Y'all take care. Enjoy. Stay safe. Stay well. Happy 4th of July as well. Talk to you next week.